So we will open IntelliJ, but I will also use the notepad here, just in case you enjoy using the notepad and the command line interface. I know some people like that. Personally, I prefer the IDE because we are humans, so we are prone to mistakes, which means that having a program that creates conveniences for you is best, at least from my opinion. Let us say I am creating or assigning or declaring a simple integer for a variable 5 here. This is part of the Java syntax where we always begin with the data type, then the variable name, then the assignment operator, followed by a literal or a constant, and then we end our statement with a semicolon. As you can see, the IE does not detect any errors. Why is that? Because the IDE is knowledgeable in the design of the Java compiler. There are 6 phases in compilation. The first 3 phases of the 6 or 7, depending on how you divide the processes at the end, the first 3 are responsible for detecting this proper syntax. We may cover this in the far future, bi'idhnillah and God willing, how to design your own compiler, or basically how to design your own programming language. The compiler of Java is designed to, if you are creating a variable, it is designed to detect the data type initially, then the name of the variable, followed by the assignment operator, then the literal, and it must end, the declaration must end, or sorry, the assignment or initialization must end with a semicolon. The same with methods. So let us create a method here just to show you how the compiler is programmed. Public void compiler detection. So the compiler is programmed to search for an access specifier, then a return type, followed by the name or the identifier of the method, which must be followed by brackets and then curly braces. If you do not add any of these elements, for example, if I remove the return type, you will see that the IDE warns you of the error here. But let us have a simplistic example here. What will happen if I forget to add the semicolon, which happens quite often? Do not think it is an error that never takes place. I have seen it multiple times for both professional developers as well as developers who are still beginning their careers, and obviously students. Thankfully, because I have the IDE, it automatically warns me, so I can hover over it and it informs me that there is a syntactical error here. If I wish to, by the way, when I click this button, it compiles and executes simultaneously. Whereas if you will use the command line, you have to compile it and then execute it. So it takes 2 steps. So I guess in your face, people who use Notepad. Anyways, so if I try to execute, here I have an error and it says I must, there is a semicolon that is expected, but it is not there. Now let us apply this to the command line interface just to see it, to see the error in its natural habitat. So let us save this as driver.java. Now if I cmd cd Now if I compile driver.java, you see it shows an error, and it also identifies the issue. Sometimes it is able to identify correctly. From my experience, most of the time it never identifies the correct position or the correct spot. This is known as a syntactical error. Why? Because it is an issue with the syntax of Java. Again, if I remove this, it will give me an error. This variable has not been declared initially. It must be declared. Oh, I think I activated caps lock by accident. Then it can be reused without the declaration. But I cannot have it like so. Initially, it must be declared. So this is also syntactical error. So any errors that are related to the syntax of Java is known as a syntactical error. Now, which part of the JDK or of the Java package is responsible for detecting syntactical errors or verifying the syntax of the source code? That is the Java compiler. As I mentioned in also previous episodes, the Java compiler has 6 or 7 steps that it must pass through. The first 3 steps are related to the verification of the proper syntax. So this issue or this error arises if it upsets the Java compiler or if it does not comply with the standards of the compiler or the proper syntax of the compiler, because the designers of the Java compiler programmed it to recognize a particular syntax. If you fail to abide by these rules, you will have an error, so you will never be able to compile the program to begin with, because you are not appeasing the compiler, which is needed for the compile time. You can compile a program so it passes the proper syntax, but it fails here with the runtime, which is the logical error. So here we will say errors that arise due to syntactical mistakes are detected by the Java compiler, which is Java C in this scenario, not the JIT. So any syntactical errors will prevent the program from compilation. Why? Because they are upsetting the compiler. And if you upset the compiler, you cannot compile the program. You can, however, appease the compiler, but you may fail to appease the JVM. So you can appease the first step, which is the compile time, but you may be unable to appease the second and final step, which is of course the execution of the program. Okay. Now let us take a look at a logical error, and that is because of the developer. Okay. An example of a logical error will be, let us say int num1, the 6 pillars of Iman or faith, and those are the 5 pillars of Islam, which is Islam. Well, Islam means submission in English, if you wish to translate it, or it is a derivative of the word submission. And then I wish to add these two, so I will say num1 minus num2. Accidentally, I placed a minus instead of a plus. This will appease both the compiler and the JVM. As you can see, it is compiling nicely and smoothly, and it gives me the answer. However, this is an erroneous answer. It is incorrect because I wanted to add them, not to subtract them. So this is known as a logical error. Let me add here int num is equal to 5 without the semicolon. This is known as a syntactical error. But as you can see, this logical error did not cause the program to crash. So how can I, as the developer, with such mistakes, cause the program to crash? Well, that is what we will see an example of in the upcoming lecture, bi'ithnillah and God willing, when we discuss an infamous or famous, depending on your perspective, error known as the Stack Overflow error. And we will cover the Stack Overflow error using an example which will be recursion. It will involve recursion because studying the Stack Overflow error through recursion is quite simple and easy to understand, as opposed to trying a different approach, at least from my perspective. In addition, I will be attaching this document here from Java tutorial point that contains different errors that you may encounter in Java. And you will notice that most, if not all of them, are related to the JVM in one form or another. As an example, we have linkage error, so an issue with linking. The initializer error from the initialization phase. We still did not cover assertion yet. That is related to unit testing. Out of memory, and that is for the heap memory. I do not know why it does not say heap, but this is related to the heap memory. Stack Overflow is related to the stack memory, which is created by the JVM. So you will notice that all of these are related to the JVM. Syntactical errors do not have their own errors. They simply say a certain token is expected, such as a semicolon or the declaration and so on and so forth. But they are considered errors nonetheless. However, normally when you hear the term error, it refers to the errors that affect or are detected by the JVM. And as we mentioned, anything related to runtime is related to the JVM. And that is it with regards to this lecture. I hope this video was helpful and beneficial to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Be safe, take care, and peace be upon you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد.